Hey guys, it's Holly from Home Nations, and as I'm coming through this front garden and walking past some of the favorite small plants and coming around the corner here, I just have to take note. For those of you who have followed me on my personal Facebook page last year, there was a big surprise that popped up in my garden, and I was absolutely stunned because it was something I hadn't worked for and I hadn't done myself, and it just showed up. And this year, as it showed up again, I'm not surprised, but I am thankful. And so I am going to just show you that God is at it again. So last year in 2019, I had planted a whole bunch of tomato plants of various kinds with my oldest daughter as part of her science homeschool project back in, I don't remember if it was February or March. We planted them in little trays indoors, and we had them ready to put outdoors in mid to late March, or just waiting until it quit freezing. And so we ended up waiting until April, and then it was flooding and rains and craziness. And so we waited until May, and we had major, I don't know if they call them 500-year floods or what they are, but they were, sections of our city were underwater for weeks after that rain. And so those plants just got pot bound and root bound and just looking really scrappy because we had started them too early and we never got to transplant them. And I remember feeling heartbroken because of all the effort that my daughter and I had put into planting tomato seeds into these little trays indoors. And right as I was feeling discouraged about it, and we were now into like June and things were still underwater in parts of our yard, I looked outside as we were having to toss out these dying pot bound things that we had planted, and when I came outside, I found a gorgeous tomato plant right here in this little section of my garden right by the front door. And it sprung up, and all season long, it plus a couple others nearby it had the most tasty fruit. And the fruit was so hearty that I remember in the fall we had several frosts and several times that everything in my garden knocked back and kind of died back from the cold temperature drops at night. But yet the tomatoes continued to produce for several weeks after that, and it just stunned me. I was like, oh my goodness, I've got this supernatural tomato plant. So anyway, this year I'm not quite so surprised that it's here because this is the location where it showed up last year. But I do know that last year we never planted anything in this spot. It literally just showed up from, I'm not sure if a kid dropped a tomato that they were eating from the grocery store, or I have no clue where the seeds came from. I just know this is a place I have never grown tomatoes. But this year I'm excited because we already have, once again this year I didn't even try to plant tomatoes because we were doing our move down the street to the other house, and we were getting Home of Nations properties up and ready for students. And I know we haven't had any students move in yet because our university is kind of in a closed section of things due to the quarantines that the world has been experiencing. But yet at the same time, I'm like amazed that here I am once again getting to harvest something I haven't worked for. Now, this is not where I actually intend to have this plant stay. It's gotten really big really fast. Oh, here's some more. Haha. Wow, it's already got some fruit on it. So, and yes, tomato technically is a fruit, even though we a lot of times call it a vegetable. So, wow. So there's kind of a fun story or a fun background for today. I've actually got several plants. You can see this one's a separate one, and I think there's a couple other tiny ones. Oh yeah. So I've got this one right here in front of the pedestal, and then I've got one back here that's kind of hiding behind a baby blueberry that the deer has grazed. This poor little blueberry plant. Every time that it gets big and bushy, the deer come and nip off the tops of it. They seem to like to eat the tops of my blueberry plants. So that one I'm going to probably have to cage this year. But yay! Thank you, God, for the generosity that went in a year that I didn't even plan to try to plant tomatoes, I get to enjoy a harvest. Oh wow, I'm seeing even more down in here. So what I had last year, they were kind of in between the size of a cherry tomato and a Campari, or just kind of one of those smaller large tomatoes. So these look a little bit, at the moment they're looking closer to the size of a large cherry tomato. They're not quite at the size of the stuff that I had last year. So it is kind of fun to watch when something reseeds itself, and I didn't actually buy a packet. It's kind of fun to enjoy some of these spontaneous harvests and some of these provisions that I didn't have to work for. It's kind of unique and fun, and so just had to share the story because I think it's super duper cool, and it's a great reminder that if you look around, not everything has to be a formal cultivated plant in a formal cultivated garden. There's times where stuff springs up wild and it has a usefulness or a purpose. There's times where we get to enjoy stuff that we didn't have to work for. So I'm not condoning laziness by any stretch of imagination. I promise you, I've done a lot of gardening this year in and among the different places where we're at. But this was one that was a fun surprise that was just given to me by that wild and beautiful design of God's multiplication of last year's seed. So, all right.